Stories, interviews, lifestyle coaching, and information meant entirely for those with atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, troublesome ectopic beats, or other heart rhythm disturbances.
Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Okay, AFIBers, it's time. Let's go live with Big Northern Bear.
I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win. I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say.
Hey everyone, welcome to the AFIB show live. I feel like I've been away for a little while, but it really hasn't been that long. I'm here today with a special guest, Dr. Lucinda Sykes. Dr. Lucinda Sykes lives not far from me, but you know, we're in the age of the internet, so we're doing this online. Welcome to the show, Lucinda.
Thank you, Danny. Very glad to be here. Thank you for the welcome.
We've had a couple of good conversations in private, and I know that we have so much to talk about, but I really want to get into what your current specialty is. So, and that is just helping people get a good, restful, natural sleep. Why is this a challenge today?
Well, maybe in the end it comes down to the modern mind, but we'd be here all night talking about the modern minds. We won't go there, but it's true, in society more broadly, there is a sleep deficit. Some say we're not giving it priority, but nonetheless, that's happening just at the very same time that the scientific research is confirming that healthy, enough, plentiful sleep is significant in all the major illnesses. You name them, sleep is important. And also for the psychiatric world too, sleep is so important.
Well, I'd say definitely in the AFib community, we are, hi Bonnie, thanks for the comment, welcome. We are definitely hyper aware of how sleep impacts our condition. And
yes.
Many of us get diagnosed with AFib and are immediately sent for sleep studies, where we find out we've been dealing with sleep apnea we didn't even know about.
Yes.
And then we have people like myself.
Fortunately, it's discovered. Wonderful.
Right.
Yes.
And we have people like myself who got the sleep study, you've got the sleep apnea, now I'm wearing a mask and it's blowing air in my face. So in order to help me actually sleep, now I need a pill. And this has caused me problems. And I from your blog I've been reading, you are very much against the long-term use of sleep medication, prescribed.
I would hate it to seem political. What I'm doing is I am speaking for the research.
Okay.
I'm one of these research nerds. I'm always in the scientific literature, and for various reasons, I've been the past couple of years really immersed in the scientific literature around sleep. And my grandmother died of Alzheimer's disease far too young. Not in our family, Alzheimer's disease, but nonetheless, she came down with it before 60. And now I'm reading the research that shows that sleeping pills are most definitely connected to an increased risk for Alzheimer's disease. And my dear grandmother took sleeping pills virtually every night of her life, so far as I knew.
Really?
Yes, yes.
How, like when I'm on Zopiclone. This is what I've been, or Imivane
Yeah.
is sometimes called, I believe.
Yes.
One of the things when I read, I always read the monograph that's included in my medication,
Great. Of course.
and the monograph completely agrees from what my doctor is telling me as to the safety for long-term use. But and more in general, I don't want to make it about me, but
They should not be writing that. They should be cautioning you not to take it for longer than 3 or at most 4 weeks.
yeah.
That's
So
the consensus.
the monograph agreed with you, but all the advice outside of that
Okay.
is like, like go ahead. Like if I went, let's say, to the website, or my
Yeah,
doctor
so
is
maybe
quite
you can
convinced
trust the monograph because the lawyers would insist that they write the truth on the monograph. But this
But
other irresponsible talk in the marketing world, that's what worries me.
how?
Patients are being sold the idea that these are sleeping pills. Actually, they are sedatives.
Okay.
They do not induce natural sleep. And that's why, in the long run, they're associated with Alzheimer's disease, increased mortality, even an increase in cancer risk. And that's in the research. I'm not making any of this up.
I think as a consumer, we get this idea that that these kind of semi-hypnotics, or however you want to call them.
Yeah, sedative hypnotics, I guess, is the technical term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the idea is we don't really see them as sedative. We're sort of have this idea that, well, it's just calming your mind and your thoughts so that natural sleep will occur. Is that
Mm.
completely wrong as
If
to what's
you
actually
burden the brain with this chemical and so-called calm it, then the brain cannot do the magnificent function of natural sleep. Through the night, we enter a series of brain states that are almost orchestrated, and brain waves coordinate throughout the brain. If you impair your brain with these chemicals, you interfere with that process. That's the natural conclusion when you look at the sleep literature and see that people who take sleeping pills have a remarkably increased risk of Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular disease. Just a couple of, I think in 2021, a study came out showing that women who were taking Z drugs had an increased risk for cardiovascular illness and, get this, mortality too.
Yeah.
These are very serious drugs and should not be taken for longer than at most 3 or 4 weeks.
Now, I've looked at a study you sent me recently about the association between use of sleeping pills and Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And on your blog article, I can see just there's lots of citation, lots of different studies
Yes.
linking these benzos or hypnotics to cancer, actually causing insomnia, long-term insomnia.
Yes, and causing it.
Alzheimer's, dementia. I mean, it's.
Yes.
What about the stuff? Let's look at what some of the alternative medical practitioners are suggesting.
Well, now
melatonin and
formal mainstream medicine has caught up in this area. Now the dictum for several years now has been that the first approach to insomnia, that's a medical condition, insomnia, should be cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. It should not be sleeping pills. Sleeping pills should not be the first line defense against insomnia.
what about things like supposed natural supplements, like, melatonin's marketed as a natural supplement?
Yes, I'm not opposed to melatonin. The research would say, well, you're kind of fooling yourself. But on the other hand, if you are inducing even the placebo response, all to the good, to the good. Yes.
So you're open to things that have no evidence of harm that might possibly help.
Yes, and there's even some evidence that's used in this way in Europe that melatonin can be useful for older people to kind of restore the melatonin levels that are lower in the later years. Yes.
Okay, very interesting.
Yes, I'm not opposed categorically to medications, not at all.
No, yeah, I feel like you're letting the evidence guide you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And that's the responsibility of it, in fact.
So how does CBT help someone develop natural sleep?
Well, CBT is the official remedy, but the research, in fact, would endorse what I'm about to say. There are other behavioral programs that also have an effect, such as ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, and all the mindfulness therapies as well. Very much help sleep. But
Right.
CBT is is almost a formula. It's a very structured approach, usually at most 6 to 8 sessions, and it has 5 main components. One of which is paradoxically what's called sleep restriction. So your time in bed is limited, and then also well, anyway, I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time on the details of CBT.
We have all yeah, just maybe jumping through at a high level.
My
One or two.
nature is mindfulness, Danny. So that's the
Okay.
odd thing. I'm able, and I do use CBT in my coaching work. But when we get to the so-called relaxation that CBT endorses, that's where I bring in mindfulness and body awareness. I think that combination of mindfulness and body awareness really is powerful.
I'll do this exercise before sleep some nights. And I gotta admit, my habit is not perfected for sleep, right? But one of the habits I found has helped me is something we call body scanning, where you
Yes,
scan.
yes, it's
Yeah. So
fundamental to mindfulness-based stress reduction. Yes,
yeah. So but I learned mine from meditation, right?
yes,
So from a
yes,
meditation workshop. So
yes.
yeah. Now I see you have a clinic about meditation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I started back in '97 teaching medical programs of what we call, the acronym is MBSR,
Okay.
meaning mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I was down many times down to the Center for Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts and trained with John Kabat-Zinn and his colleagues. And then I came to, of course, I was living in Toronto, and I brought the idea back to Toronto and started the clinic. And by gosh, we had Meditation for Health for 23 years until COVID struck, and we
Right.
had to stop all of our in-person teaching. And that's where I decided maybe it's time for a new direction. That's what
And
I'm
so
doing now.
so you put yourself out online and you're coming on shows like mine?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But you see, it's the same mindfulness.
Correct. Correct.
Mindfulness is here right now as we're talking about other matters. Mindfulness is here. And drawing attention to the experience of mindfulness can be very healing, even when you're lying sleepless at night and other times during the day, during stressful circumstances, just to bring mindfulness to the situation.
Absolutely. So I want to answer Susu Jordan's question. I know it's not about sleep, but I don't like to leave questions unanswered in the chat.
No.
So, hi, can you speak about anyone who struggles with AFib while at work? So there, because this is the AFib show, so we're going to have some
Yes.
answer questions. So I'll give my take, and then Lucinda, if you have a take to add to it, we'll
Oh, yes, yes. Well, actually, we're speaking about mindfulness, and that
Yeah.
all the mind-body techniques come to play in this question. Yes.
I would say, Suzu, if you have the medical clearance and they feel it's safe for you to just carry on with your day while in AFib, that mindfulness will help you sort of. A lot of what we do is when we're in AFib, we tend to catastrophize in our mind. We go to the worst place, like, oh my God, I'm going to have to call the hospital. I'm going to need a cardioversion. But the very first thing you should do is you should sit down with your cardiologist and ask him, I'm having AFib at work. Give me a guideline. At what point should I ask to go home sick? At what point should I ask to get an ambulance? And he give you those guidelines. And having those guidelines in my life was such a godsend.
Absolutely.
So if my doctor said, well, if you're in AFib longer than 30 minutes after you take your medication, then I want you to come to the hospital. So I had now a guideline to go by. I think a lot of your stress is coming from not having the rules of the game that you're in right now. So talk to your doctor about, what to do, because your AFib is probably a lot different than mine. But another thing I would suggest, if you're the kind of person whose AFib doesn't leave you completely debilitated while you're in it, get a work buddy and say, when I'm in AFib, can we just go for a walk together? So you're not walking alone. but go for a walk, try to get your mind off work as possible. The stress at work has helped you get into AFib. So get out of that, get into the air, and go for a little walk and see if that can help get you some relief. And again, I don't know your background. Maybe you're in AFib half an hour a day, or maybe it's very rare that it comes on. I don't know how debilitating it is, but that would be my general advice. And Lucinda, what have you got?
Oh, and I might further contribute. It depends how much time you have. I don't know about your interests or background, but you'd be well served to take up some form of inner work, shall we call it meditation or mindfulness or even very gentle yoga, so that you become very accustomed to the inner world. Science calls it interoception. So that you can go to that side of yourself, especially at that onset point. Something has happened, that the AFib has started, and you can sink into yourself and be with yourself, breathing and just settling. And then, yes, this idea of going for a mindful walk, maybe that might be exactly what you need.
Absolutely.
Or just being with your breathing. You follow your own guide. Yeah.
And be safe about it. I think if you establish a
Yes.
work buddy who is aware of your health condition, that you can say, hey, I'm in AFib right now. Can you just can we just keep in touch in case things go bad? We'll do a lot to take the stress out of the situation for you. And maybe your AFib then will just pass and you can get on with your day. So,
and here's an image can I offer that you might find useful. Your body is a creature too. And you can be with your body. She's just had something has happened. And you can sit and be with her. We call it self-compassion. You extend self-compassion, self-acceptance to yourself. Because at a certain level, you're fighting, of course, who wants this condition to occur. But on another level, we can practice self-compassion and even acceptance. And paradoxically, that can help things to change. Paradoxically, even as we accept the situation.
mm-hmm. And the same can be true for when you're laying in bed trying to fall asleep, but you can't.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I'd say for me, this is the mental trap I get in when I'm trying to sleep is I'll have gotten to bed later than usual for whatever reason. Maybe I had a week like the week I just had where so many emergency things happen, and that now it's midnight and I know I have to be up at 6 a.m. So I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to get a full night's sleep. So now I'm feeling even more pressure to fall asleep to make the most of that time. And it has the opposite effect upon me.
Yes. And that's why I'm frequently counseling people to give up fixing their sleep or improving their sleep. Any kind of effort around sleep is it's counterproductive.
Yeah.
So rather we just have to accept the worst of it. Even the speculation that I'm going to be sleepless all night and exhausted tomorrow. And oddly, that can help it to change.
Is that why things like just counting your breaths or counting sheep, as they used to say, the act of you're sort of forcing your mind to keep track of something?
There's many different patterns that people can use. For example, that's why I suggest the yoga studio and so on. But very simple ones of paying attention to your breath, and especially prolonging the out breath and prolonging the space between breaths. Not so that you're holding your breath, not that type of stress, but rather just allowing the breath itself to slow down.
Thanks for that feedback, Susie. I think your body is telling you right there that what you need.
Well, look at that. Your body's guiding you. Yes, I'm so glad that we're contributing in harmony with it. That's fabulous.
Can you get into why does the breathing pattern help me fall asleep, breathing one way versus another?
I wouldn't worry about a why.
Okay.
My mind is such I can yammer this or that, and you'll even be convinced that I know what the heck I'm talking about.
Okay.
But you have a mystery. You are this body, and it does these things. And sure, we can talk about the chemistry that's behind all these movements, but what about the spirit itself that animates your body?
Okay.
Yeah.
So by getting down in the weeds, we're sort of just losing. It's just
It's
more
just the
nitty-gritty to
mind
worry about.
chattering. The mind chatters. And if the mind is busy and noisy, we are distracted from the present moment. And usually the flower of existence is in the present moment.
Okay. Okay. No, that's good. You give me something to think about there.
Yeah,
it's not the answer I was expecting, and I like that. So, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried a few times to come off my current sleeping medication, and I've been very public about it. And I have to say that I'm really glad I went public about it, because there are actually a whole bunch of people on my channel who follow for that, and they don't have a heart
Oh,
condition, but they like seeing my Zoplicone updates,
good
and
for you. Yes.
those are some of my most commented videos, because people are like, "Oh
Yes.
my God, I was
It's
on
such a
that. It's the
common
worst thing."
problem.
Yeah,
Yes, in my work, my private coaching, that's probably the most common problem I've been dealing with is sleeping pills and also antidepressants, because they also influence the sleep.
right. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. If anything that's going to sort of, let's say, mess with the wiring of your mind.
Yes, well put.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that we've just, and the reasons are probably many, but I would say we've become a society that reaches for the pill so quickly, and I think it's largely driven by the fact that now drug companies are marketing to us directly, even for stuff that requires a prescription. At this started about 15 years ago, I would say, and I've really seen it's had an impact on the culture.
I agree. I'm old enough to remember the early, was it Vance Packard who wrote about the hidden persuaders, looking at the effect of the marketing industry on psychology, and that was decades ago.
Right.
But at that time, it was illegal to market pharmaceuticals, and now it's happening. Well, my television is full of it. Yeah.
That's right. It was a prescription medication. It was illegal to put it on
Yeah.
television as an advert.
Yes, because
Or a
it should not be promoted.
Mhm.
These are, they're so powerful that you're really playing with the body in a way that really even science doesn't understand. And especially if you then take a second pharmaceutical, or even some people are taking 3 or 4, and then they're all mixing around in the body, so to speak. What the heck is going on? We don't know.
I think that it's I mean, the most recent example is everyone on this planet knows what Ozempic is.
Yes.
And really, unless you're diabetic, you shouldn't know what Ozempic is.
No. The problem is the attitude to the body. The body is not being respected. It's being treated as a possession or a tool. I'm going to change it. And because the body is just this piece of matter, well, I'm going to use pharmaceuticals. That's a piece of matter. It's chemistry. And I'm just going to make myself have the body I want, I should have. And it's an attitude.
Yeah. And I would say, but that is the messaging we hear every day.
Yes. The individual needs to take a stand for their own well-being, and don't adopt a mindset which is even destructive to the body in the long term.
I actually get flack from some people because I actually paid for YouTube Premium so that I don't see the ads. But I don't want those ads.
Oh, it's the gambling ones also get me going.
I don't know what ads are on YouTube, and I'm happy that way.
Just as well.
I left television because of the ads, and I don't watch anything where there's advertising. Yeah. I don't like to listen to the radio in the car, but I've always found that there's almost, it's just too much manipulation and too much. And one example is a personal example is, if there's a movie that's being heavily advertised and I say to my stepson, would you like to go to it? He sure as heck does. But if I bring up a movie that hasn't been, he's not interested at all.
Yes.
And it's almost, it's really amazing how effective advertising has become.
Yeah, it's directed to the 9-year-old within us all.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So,
It's an exploitation of our childlike nature.
Can we talk a bit about, and this is an interesting
But
article
I
found
want to
in-
just insert, there
Go
are
ahead.
many fine people working at these organizations and companies. Through the
Yes.
years, I've had so many clients or patients who were part of the corporate world, and they meant well, and they're, living good human lives. So it's a paradox. But what's being served, the attitude to the body and to the natural world, is most pathological. But these individuals are there.
Well, I think my attitude is this, and maybe you'll agree or not, but my attitude is that every drug was developed for a reason. There was a problem they were
Yes.
trying to solve. But what happens is we're so quick to get prescribed and so quick to reach for them. We find ourselves just constantly on something. They're being mixed in ways that we're on several things now. Who can keep track of all the
Yeah.
side effects? I mean, the computer at the pharmacy tries to keep
Yeah.
track of the cross reactions, but overall, we tend to be living a little longer these days than 30 years ago. So we don't.
Well, actually,
but
the death rate is changing, or the longevity rates are changing. They're beginning to recede
Yeah.
once again.
for the first time in decades, they're
Yes,
starting to
something's
shrink.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about this article that you wrote. Do you want more optimism?
Ha 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 ha.
Where you treat optimism sort of like a health supplement.
Oh, yes, quite rightly. Gosh,
Tell us about that.
it's funny you should bring that up. I just found a new paper.
Optimistic women have less cognitive decline.
It's the truth. Paper after paper confirms
Want
that.
a long life? Try more optimism.
There it is.
Research
Yes.
investigated exceptional longevity, a lifespan of 85 years or beyond. They discovered that optimistic people are much more likely to live into their advanced years.
That's what the research shows.
Isn't that interesting?
Isn't it?
Optimism protects your heart. Remarkably, science continues to demonstrate that optimistic people are at lower risk for illness and death when contrasted by their more pessimistic peers.
It seems to suggest that optimism is a biological state. It's certainly a psychological state, but it correlates with a biological or physiological state.
Now, I've never met a pessimist. Everyone I meet that is a pessimist thinks they're a realist.
Oh, I wonder what their body thinks.
Yeah.
It's at the body level. How's the blood pressure? Optimism, the blood pressure tends to drop.
Right.
The stress response is less likely to happen if you have an optimistic attitude, because after all, the future will bring you some good stuff, even if you're suffering right now.
So how does a realist make the decision to become an optimistic person, and how do they start? How do you do that? Like what
A very simple way is, at the end of each day, you make the habit of writing maybe 3 things that happened that you felt good about today.
Okay. Like a gratefulness, things I'm glad happened, or-
without necessarily needing to use that word grateful. You just want to evoke some optimism.
Right.
And you just go there, and it's in your nature. So you go there and it becomes its own habit.
Interesting.
But you have to do it each day. You will likely find a little reluctance. You'll find you forget it because, hey, psychological change is difficult. Especially as the decades advance, we get in a rut. And indeed, a sort of pessimistic attitude can be its own rut.
I think all self-improvement is difficult.
Yes.
And
Isn't
quite often, the more you need it, the more difficult it is to do it.
It really is a warrior practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the way of the sage, however you want to characterize it. Yeah.
When I look at like we look at metabolic syndrome, let's say, which is this collection of
enormous problem.
collection of illnesses that are all obviously interrelated and perhaps in some ways that are not clear.
Yeah.
But I kind of wonder if there's when I read your body of work, if there's something like that where there's the collection of things that revolve around, poor sleep, poor attitude, poor mental health. I wonder if that's another cluster that's just floating under everyone's radar and is not
The
quite
good news is if people pay attention, it will reveal itself to them.
right.
If they pay attention, like your work is inviting them to inquire,
Yeah,
to observe within themselves what's going on. It
right.
doesn't need to be a political, opinionated. It's curiosity. It's gardening.
Well, your medical and health decisions should always be apolitical. I believe they should be
Yes.
what brings you health.
Yeah, you're serving the body. Let's face it.
Yeah,
The mind in these serious conditions, the mind is serving the body. The mind is humbled by the body. The mind is not there to discipline the body, to reinforce things. Oddly, the mind isn't even there to heal things. It doesn't need to be a goal because that brings a kind of self-judgment. Is it working yet? Am I getting better?
Right.
This kind of efforting is stressful, and we don't want the stress. Instead, we want the feeling of going into our garden each day and caring for it.
right. And that seeing if to use a garden analogy, you pull the weeds every day, but you actually don't see the flowers for a few weeks.
Yes.
And then when you
Yes.
do, then you get the reward. Then you
Yes.
get the esteem and the
But in part is because you love it.
right.
We love our garden. It's doing the best it can.
But it creates purpose. When you
Yes.
have to invest a little time in each day in something,
You
it
have
creates
to.
purpose, right?
Yes, this
So-
is real self-care, caring for
Interesting.
yourself. I agree,
Interesting.
not just going through the motions. You're not doing what you should. Goodness sakes, get past that one because you'll give up soon enough. Don't be
Mhm.
doing what you should. Care for yourself. And notice that each day you can care for yourself with a few very simple but meaningful actions.
Give me something you do for yourself.
Oh, I practice yoga every morning.
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For
That's great.
decades. Yeah, that's
Wow.
been a very important part of my life.
Yeah. Yoga is one of those things I always say I need to do more yoga, but then I never actually do more yoga. And
Well, oddly, you're already doing yoga. All you need to do is to begin to pay attention to the feeling of being your body.
okay.
And in that moment, you are practicing yoga.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the body will reveal itself to you if you ask.
Now, on the opposite side of the coin, you have some articles here about hostility. So hostility.
Yes. Isn't
Yeah.
it fabulous, this research? Yeah.
Tell us what the effects of chronic hate, anger, or hostility have upon a person's health.
It's especially hard on the heart, the cardiovascular system more broadly. Now, I've forgotten the statistics. They'll be right there in the blog, of course. But the consensus is that the chronic hostility contributes to cardiovascular illness.
Let's see. Let me
And
see.
that
if I can pull out
includes,
some-
as I recall, the carotid artery,
right.
as I recall. Yeah, because that's another article I've been reading recently. But in this case, it was sleep that contributes to problems with the carotid artery. But yes, hostility can as well.
So by hostility, this could include things like such as carrying around resentment.
Yes, cynicism is our favorite
Cynicism.
form of hostility.
Okay.
Next time you're sitting looking at an ad and feeling cynical, check in with your body. What state are you in?
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's certainly an abundance of cynicism online in general.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can maybe be wise and know what the heck's going on, but you don't need to be in a toxic state of cynicism.
Okay. Researchers discovered after 10 years the women who measured in the top quarter of the group for hostility were at a 22% greater risk to develop heart disease and stroke
Yeah. Isn't
when
that
compared
shocking?
to the women in the lowest quarter of the group, or
Yeah.
let's say the least hostile feeling people. Another study of 792 women showed similar findings. Their average was 67 years and all had a past history of heart disease, all completed. Okay, I'm getting a little into the weeds on that.
So the trick would be to bring mindfulness to hostility. Do not fix your hostility. By gosh, if you try to fix your hostility, you're being hostile to your own hostility.
Right.
Instead, get curious about it.
I think this is one of the, like, I used cognitive behavior therapy to reduce. I always say I took my anxiety from about a 12 problem out of 10, where it was a 12 in my life, to about a 7. And that's not great, but it's a huge improvement
Oh,
to
that
my
sounds
quality of life.
wonderful. That's having
Yeah.
it.
And
Fabulous.
I still have my days, but I
Yeah, well,
don't
you get to
I
have a
don't have them every
personality.
day.
You know,
Right?
you can foster yourself, you can cultivate yourself without in any way criticizing yourself.
I
You
think
can be
I
just as you are,
I
even as
think
you
that's what
encourage change.
the
Yeah.
cognitive and cognitive behavior therapy is all about, is recognizing, being able to recognize. If you can cultivate the skill to recognize in real time the emotions you're feeling, and just be self-aware of those emotions, like
Yes, real
you're
body
saying.
work. There's yoga. There's more yoga right there.
Okay.
Seriously.
Yeah, and I think with AFibers, obviously we have this stressor of our heart could go off, or it's actually gone off, or we
Yes.
have a couple of ectopic beats that sort of give us this false
Yeah.
alarm that it might go off,
Yeah.
and we have an anxiety or a fear response to
Yeah. The
that. And
catastrophizing quality. Yeah.
right, so I think if, as an AFibber, if you can recognize in real time, hey, I'm having an anxiety response to what my heart just did,
Yes.
and it may not be justified. I think that
Yes.
actually goes a long way to calming your heart. Just
Fantastic.
recognizing it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's real mindfulness. It leaves itself open to that kind of wise counsel. Yeah.
When, so you've been counseling primarily ladies, but I believe you counsel men.
Well, I worked with everybody for 23 years. The clinic
Okay.
was open to whoever the other physicians were sending to the clinic, and we took whoever was sent. Yeah.
Okay. And what
I
I
work
guess
with
what
women now in my individual coaching. That's where
right.
the women
So
over 50 comes in.
so if, yeah, so I guess I'm saying, if anyone wanted to look you up online, you're
Oh,
available to hire as a sleep coach.
yes,
You're
there you
available
go.
for counseling sessions. You work mostly with women, but are you open to male clients, or do you just
Well, I'm
specialize?
not opposed to men. By gosh, I worked with men for so many
Okay.
decades.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
But my focus has been women over 50. I call it Best Sleep Now, and it's private coaching for women over 50. But everybody here is welcome to, download all my stuff. And even though some of it will seem to be directed to the ladies, it's relevant to the men also, except
Well,
maybe there's
I
a little
put
more pink. The
I
PDFs might have more pink than one would send to gentlemen.
fair enough. Well, yeah, I put a link to your little sleep guide down in the description. So
Oh,
I
yes.
highly recommend everyone go sign up for Lucinda's email alerts. You'll get a nice little sleep guide that's actually got some great information in it.
Yes.
That's totally free. Nothing
Yeah,
to
and
worry
it's
about.
really the best science. It's really the foundation of caring for yourself. Yeah. And so beyond that, then, I mean, if you have frank insomnia and so on, there's other things. But this is the basic, in medical parlance, we call it sleep hygiene, how
Right.
to cultivate your sleep. And
How
now the
can
science is giving us more and more information, including what sounds to use in soundscapes, that sort of thing.
when we were in Montreal this week, they had this little device next to the bed called a white noise generator.
Yes, there we go. That's exactly what I'm referring to. Yeah.
Okay, so what does that do?
Well, you can purchase different frequencies, Danny, so they don't all need to be at that white noise level. There's something called pink noise, rather attractive image.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they are to help you deal with sounds that would interrupt you during the night. Because a noisy environment can give you micro arousals. You don't even realize that you've woken up,
Right.
but nonetheless, your brainwave patterns have been interrupted. And so, a soundscape can be helpful. But others say, gosh, it's really taxing the brain to be listening to sounds all night, even if they are coming from a machine. And
Right.
yeah, so there's some ambivalence about its use.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from the physics point of view. When they say white noise, I think about, you have a source of noise that's creating a wave, of energy. So the white noise, I guess the idea is that one wave should be canceling out or reducing the, like there's a pure physics, a pure energy wave, right? So you can actually have a wave coming in the other direction, and the two have a net effect of
Interesting
canceling each
idea.
other out.
Yeah,
So
if
I
you
thought maybe it was
talk.
more something similar to that.
No, well, it's presented as just a distraction. It's not meant to affect the other sound signals, the other sound waves.
Right.
It's just meant, it's presented as a distraction, but you're quite right. Maybe the physicists would tell us it is doing something at that level.
Well, I thought that's maybe what that machine was trying to do, because if you actually wear noise canceling headphones, like
Yes.
good ones, that's what they do.
Yes, there you go.
Right.
So maybe indeed. Yes, I may be speaking out of my depth here. I haven't studied them in detail, just in a superficial way.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
but where you can purchase them and what they claim to do.
Now, you and I have had, so just so everyone knows, we're probably going to, excuse the pun, drift off the sleep topic here. But one thing that you and I were talking about is, does society in general just have a mindfulness deficit?
Well, it's actually at heart, it's a deep probe into our society, our collective mind, our worldview. And we take it for granted, just like fish don't know of the water in which they swim. The individuals in a society don't really know the fullness of the society that they're swimming in. For example, this attitude to the natural world, including an attitude to our body. We just take it for granted that we can, treat ourselves in this way. Right. And other societies wouldn't do so.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. We talked about one thing I've talked about on my channel several times, but I think you and I have talked about privately as well, is that, you can put your mind very easily today. You can put your mind on a junk food diet for your mind. Just so easily, where I don't think in previous generations, they issued one paper a day and you were done. You read it in the morning, you went on with your day. But now it's possible to get bogged down in politics all day long, or whatever, activism all day long, or TikTok all day long, or these toxic things. There's like just a never-ending stream.
An individual needs to consciously protect themselves. You need to chaperone yourself and decide, rather than let yourself kind of like a dog nosing through the garbage. Instead of distracting yourself, consciously navigate.
Yeah, I don't think people realize in the spill-off effects that, indulging too much in these things can actually have. And it's almost, what do you call that? When they used to they used to hide messages in records, subliminal. It's almost subliminal.
Yes.
The effect of, even though maybe you're listening to things you agree with, but if you're coming away cynical, if you're coming away angry all the time, if
and they want you to be high on these emotions, because then you'll come back.
Right.
They encourage it.
Yeah.
They do. Yes. And there's even now a curse. The scientific literature has got lots of papers about sleep procrastination. People staying up, the hours go by and they're scrolling through Facebook, or they're online, or
just one more video, just one more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's a torture for the body, but they're not paying attention.
Right.
Yes.
What about the impact of just the light from the screen in your face?
Yes,
an hour
yes,
before
the blue light phenomenon, which is well attested to now, that light from the blue end of the spectrum tends to affect the brain in a special way, and it decreases the release of melatonin. It actually interferes with our chief sleep hormone.
Right.
And it's the blue light. And it comes from, especially from cathode ray technology. And it's all through our computers, including those pernicious mobile devices we can't help looking at.
Right. And I know there's been some sort of development where they try to make, like, I've got my phone set up to reduce the blue light at night, but it's still there. The blue light is still there. You can never completely eliminate it from the screen.
Well, it may be actually active. We're dealing something that activates the brain, and maybe it doesn't even need an actual wavelength of light to have its influence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know one light that got me to sleep every single time without fail. And that was when I'm camping and I sit by the campfire for an hour before bed,
Yes.
I will sleep like a baby
Oh,
every time.
there's evolution at play. Yeah, it's our ancestors for thousands of years. That was it.
And
Oh, yeah.
a campfire has no blue light.
No,
No, there's
no.
no blue light, and like light from the sun has blue light, but from a
Yes.
campfire,
Fabulous
a
observation. I
lamp, an
hadn't thought
oil
about
lamp.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I always remarked when I go camping, I always sleep so good, and I think it's because I sit by the fire every night,
Yes.
and in the dark, and the only light is the fire, and I'm not looking at my phone, and then I just go right to bed from there. I just always sleep so well.
Yes, in a very primitive way in my Happy Sleep Secrets, that PDF you were talking about, I emphasize pink lights and
Pink
invite women to have pink lights, especially the lights they need to turn on when they use the washroom at night.
So an actual pink colored bulb, you're saying?
Well, you can choose your favorite color, but from that end of the spectrum, certainly the flames. Yes,
Right.
the yellow end of the spectrum.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because by definition it's an absence of blue. So
Yeah, they call it the amber end of the spectrum.
yeah,
And you're doing it today for us, Danny, in the background you've chosen. We're getting that vibe.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I've noticed, like, I mean, years ago, they became the rage, these glasses called blue blockers.
Yes, I've used them. I've got a pair. Yeah.
And there are still guys, these are like 20 years ago, they were made some guy $1 million, but there are still people swearing by these things.
Yes, some actually do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay extra, I believe, or maybe that's a false belief, but they will do the job and they will occlude a certain wavelength, maybe even, yeah.
Yeah, so I've used these things and I do find they are helpful.
Yes.
If like, I don't use them now because I actually have a program. So if I'm working late on my system, because I have to for work sometimes or editing videos, but my system will actually eliminate the blue light from my monitors after a certain time at night. It just eliminates it.
I find they help my eyes to rest at night. Whether or not there's a preponderance of blue light, I don't know, but my eyes feel more rested in preparation for sleep.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think just finding a simple way, whatever that is, changing your light bulb in your bedroom, change the bulbs in your bedroom, or little software on your computer, just some simple way so that an hour or two before bed, the blue light sort of just gently leaves your life.
Yes, and dim the lights and let this be the influence of that end of the spectrum. And see, the likelihood is you'll actually begin to feel it influencing your urge to get sleepy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's
you have to do it consciously, though, because Facebook would prefer that you sit there and keep scrolling.
Well, I mean, they've actually had their own, Facebook's own studies were leaked, and they're well aware that anger keeps you on the platform longer than joy, right? Than joy.
Yeah. So you're working against yourself with that habit. It's just a habit. Shepherd yourself. Care for yourself the way you would your beloved child. If you knew what was going on, you wouldn't let her do these things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm first of all, I'm really glad that we've had our talks prior to the show and now on the show, and that my audience has gotten to know you a bit. And I think, I mean, if listening to me hasn't convinced anyone, I hope listening to you is, I mean, sleep has to be, for an AFibber.
Oh, yes.
It all starts with sleep.
Oh, yes.
All the other interventions you're going to make, if you're not sleeping good, they're for nothing.
And so when you lie at night, whether you're in AFib or not, you can place your hands. This is the self-compassion, ladies and gentlemen. You place your hands maybe on the chest or the abdomen or the belly, and just rest your hands. Gravity will do the resting for you. You don't need to push. And just be kind to this being that you are.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe do the body scan we talked about. And
yes.
Yeah.
And the mind will do this and that, but your resting hands will communicate at a deeper level.
Right. So yeah, just rest your hands on your belly. Feel the
Yes.
breath go in and out.
Yes.
And
And if you are in AFib and the mind starts up about that, go below the mind and just allow the body to be as it is now.
right.
Yeah, we call it acceptance, but it's a profound biological state and really does help healing. It fosters the immune system, in fact.
Right. I think one thing that creates a lot of anxiety in AFibers is no one's ever just told them just being in AFib is not going to kill you. I know it. Being in AFib a long time has bad effects that eventually can build up into something. But
Yes.
being in AFib right now for 20 minutes
Yes.
is not going to kill you. And
Yes. So
the
you're
first time
countering
someone
this.
told
Yeah.
first time someone told me that, it was like a huge load off my shoulders.
Yeah,
I
that's
wasn't.
great.
Someone on Facebook actually said, "Bear, relax. AFib's not going to kill you today." And
Yes.
and they said it with such confidence, and I realized, you're probably right. And
Yes.
I think our doctors almost sometimes neglect to tell us.
Yes.
They treat us like you're going to be just fine, but they don't actually say it. And I think people need to hear that.
Yes.
That
And
you
it's great then you can say it to yourself. You
true,
can trust yourself around that. Yes.
true.
Yes. And your hand can communicate that. This is a hand of full acceptance. The body
Well,
being
just the act of deliberately. It, for those who might be listening right now and thinking this doesn't sound like much of an intervention, let me just say, the act of picture yourself, you're in bed, your mind is wandering, you can't seem to get to sleep, but just by the act of just putting your hands in that position, think about what you've done. You've now recognized in real time that you're in an unhealthy pattern and you're not sleeping. You've become cognizant of that. And so now you're diverting and you're implementing an action. I'm just going to put my hands and I'm now aware that I'm in this trap. Because sometimes you lay in bed, oh, I can't sleep, man. I really need to. And you're not even self-aware that you're spinning.
Yeah, it's just the
you're in
mind
trouble
is
on your
spinning.
wheel.
Yeah,
And
the mind. Yeah, we are bigger than the mind. At the
so
very least, we are the body, but we're certainly bigger than whatever the mind is spinning up.
I guess what I'm saying is that the act of actually taking an action, as small as that might
Yes.
seem, is actually you stepping off that wheel. So
You are an inspiration to your community, Danny, and with
you.
full respect, I've observed that in your work. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
I think, and so oh, I can't sleep. What is moving my hand position? No, it's not about the hands.
Try it and see what it is.
That's
Try
right.
it. Rather
Well,
than the mind going blah, blah, blah.
I think it's more
Try
you've
it.
recognized you're in the sleep trap.
Yeah.
You've become aware of it, and now you can say, "Hey, I need to relax. I'm actually getting nowhere in this thought pattern.
Yes.
So I'll just move my hands and try something new."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Give your body a chance to respond.
yeah, good stuff.
This is why, my emails are all about mind body right at the outset, that automation I send everybody.
Well, your emails are excellent.
Mind body. Yeah. Optimism is mind body, right?
Correct. Yeah. I would suggest get on Lucinda's email. It's a couple of emails a week. She's not mail bombing you every day. It's a couple.
No, she
They
hasn't the
always
energy.
bring value. They always have some good research attached to them. So get on. How else
yeah.
can people follow you, Lucinda?
Well, I like I say, I'm a research nerd, so I do turn out these emails and I put them on the blog more or less in an organized way. Right. So if you do sign on, there's shorthand is go to lucindagift.com, and that'll hook you up with my PDF that Danny was mentioning earlier, which is 24 pages of sleep hygiene tips, also known as Happy Sleep Secrets. And that will sign you up to the sleep list, and you'll get one of these emails each week or so. Although at the outset, I sort of speed it up a bit and give you, every couple of days, because I want you to immerse yourself in the idea of mind, body.
Right. Yeah. You have a couple of websites, but they all bring you sort of, so you have You have joyfulafter50.com. So
That's where the blog is. So that's the principal role for most people. Yeah, the blog is there. But also, people are welcome to download the stress relief audio guide. That's free of charge too. And that's, well, that one is Lucinda, what am I calling that? LucindaVideo.com. So if you
Lucinda
want
video. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
see that before. Let me
Yeah,
see.
yeah, and it's an 18-minute instructional. It's not trying to induce a special state. This is showing the basics of stress relief. So I used it at the clinic for years. It was very popular. So there you go. You're welcome to check it out for yourself.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. And I know, like, my community really appreciates a good night's
It's been
sleep.
a great pleasure.
We're glad to have you. And I think I'm going to play us out a minute, but I'm hoping you come back again in the future.
I'd love to do so. I'm sure we have lots more to say.
That'd be
Dan.
great. Do you have any plans of starting a YouTube channel yourself one day, or?
Well, I am a chatterbox, it's true, but I'm also a little short of energy these days. You know, I have this individual coaching now, which I've taken on with such enthusiasm, and that's taking up a lot of my energy. And
That's
yeah.
okay. Like, I mean, we go where we feel effective, right?
Yes, well, it's great to be in this final stage of my career and be able to bring all my background to bear on this individual work.
Well, it's nice for us too to hear, because I guess because you're retired from practice now.
Yes.
You can just say.
Yes, so I speak very frankly and even forthrightly about sleeping pills.
Yes.
Backed up by the research and so on. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, getting the emails from you a couple times a week is what's keeping me motivated to keep trying to get off mine.
Okay, well, I'll just keep the information coming. Don't misunderstand that I'm a political or polemicist. I'm not. I just tell people the research.
No,
I don't want it to be overlooked. For some reason, it's being overlooked. And again, I suspect a kind of, shall we say, a trance coming from this pharmaceuticals industry's hegemony in the world of marketing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we always hear the loudest instrument in the band.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And anyway, I don't want to talk too much about the medical profession. Gosh, these people are my colleagues and mean well.
Well, yeah. And honestly, I mean, they save lives. Let's admit it. And there are times you need a drug. There are just times that you need
the sleeping pills are great for the first couple of weeks if you are desperate to sleep. You've just suffered a serious trauma. You've maybe had surgery. You lost your beloved spouse. You lost your job, and you're tormented. And it will help you for a few weeks, but God forbid that you get stuck on them.
Yeah.
And that's the risk, because you develop tolerance and feel withdrawal when you try to stop.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not being over the top in this regard.
The product monograph in the box will back you up.
Will back me up, yeah.
So the drug companies, they know that. They put it in the box.
Yeah, they don't want to put a lie on paper.
Right.
They'll just put it glibly, and they'll imply it in the ad.
Right. Yeah, they'll show this happy, restful person who's just sleeping gloriously night after night on television. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and they're playing on the fact that most people think that a state of sedation is the same as a state of sleep.
Right.
But they're very different brain states. And that's the risk. That's why the brain suffers over years of this. The brain becomes even senile.
I think
that's what the evidence is.
To me, that's the most important lesson I'm taking from this conversation.
Yes.
Sedation is not sleep.
It is not sleep. And when you see someone drunk on the street, you know they're not sleeping. They have passed out.
But they're heavily sedated. Yeah.
Alcohol is a sedative.
Right.
It belongs in the same category as, God forbid, even these sleeping pills.
Do you have a final word for my audience?
Oh, no, I have felt the spirit of them. I was especially glad to get the interjection of a question. Yeah. And it's really good. And also, I do respect the work that you're doing, your outreach. I'm very glad to have been here.
Thank you very much. I'm just trying to share what I've learned more than anything. I take credit for very little of it.
Yeah.
I have very few original ideas. I've
By the way,
learned it from someone else and put it out there. So
I'm just thinking, I will open up a couple of spaces if people would like to come in just for a chat. It's not a sales session, but I have a Best Sleep Now format that I offer people. We work on self-care. And I'm so respectful of your audience that I'll put 5 spots out. But
oh, wonderful.
Yeah, you would find that at meetwithlucinda.com.
Okay, I'll update the description in the morning and put that in there.
But just a few spots. I just struck me. It's such a good experience to be with you, Danny. And I really respect your post. That one on fatty liver was brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Did you watch the poo video? If you like the fatty liver, you'll love the poo video.
Yes, I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying your work, indeed.
Thank you very
So
much.
it's great to contribute, and you can certainly keep me in mind. You know where I am.
Thank you. So, yeah, that's very generous of you, and we'll make sure the link's there after the show for people so they can take you up on that offer. Well,
Best wishes to the audience.
Yes. It's amazing how fast an hour goes by, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it was a fertile discussion I would offer.
Thank you. And it'll be up. It stays at this link permanently. So I do get quite a bit of views after the go live. So people watch this during the week. And I'll also be taking the audio and putting it out on the podcast. So people will be listening to there who follow
that's interesting.
the podcast. Yeah. So I get double purpose.
My gosh. And nothing we refer to can be dated, I would say. This is really basic science that's going to be true in the long run. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. I'm going to play us out and then just stay with me in the studio for a minute. You and I can wrap up.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you very much.
We're broken, it's tragic, we're not all elastic, but maybe there's magic, believe you could have it. And I know of sadness, the anxious and panic, the infinite vastness of all that is blackness.